Let us bring our palms together then to pay veneration to the Perfect One, the fount of wisdom and the source of all compassion and loving kindness, the greatest teacher that mankind has ever seen, our Father, our Guide, our Master. Let us bring our palms together and chant the Namaskara, followed by which we will seek refuge in the Noble Triple Gem, observe the precepts, and commence today's proceedings. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Respectable Silmanian Mahansa, righteous Rajagirians, we observe this precept, Sabba Satte Sumetta Sahagatena Chetasa Viharanang Samadhyami. We have talked about this several times in the past. But I want to ask you this question. Do you know what it means when we say Satta? What does that actually mean? What does Satta actually mean? You could loosely translate it as sentient beings. So Sabba Satta must be all sentient beings. The Buddha speaks of what a Satta is. And the Buddha defines a Satta as a mind that experiences sense of self. That is what a Satta is. So any mind that experiences a sense of self is a what? Satta. It is any mind that attaches itself to the experience of self. So, are you a Satta? Good. No, not good. Good that you know that. Is an Arahanta Satta? Arahant Satta? No. Is the Buddha a Satta? A Pacceka Buddha a Satta? No. So there are three kinds of living beings. There are three kinds of living beings who are not Satta. All other living beings, this is a universal truth, all other living beings are Sattas. So who are the three kinds of living beings that are not Satta? Supreme Buddhas, Pacceka Buddhas, and Arahata Buddhas. So then this side of being a Buddha, so all these three are Buddhas, right? Supreme Buddhas, Pacceka Buddhas, and Arahata Buddhas. So then you could say that anyone that's not a Buddha is a Satta. So then who's a Bodhisattva? Is that a Buddha? Is a Bodhisattva a Buddha? No, we call them Buddha aspirants. We call them Buddha aspirants. So there is a Satta that aspires to achieve Buddhahood. Meaning, it's a mind that experiences a sense of self, which aspires to get to a state where it no longer experiences a sense of self. So that is a Bodhisattva. So, Sattas in the house. I almost said, can all the real Slim Shadys please stand up? So sattas in the house. Can you put your hand up? We are all sattas. Bodhisattvas in the house. Again, that's all of us. Why are we entitled to the term a bodhisattva? Because although we are sattas, in other words, minds that experience a sense of self, it is our aspiration to achieve a state of mind where we no longer experience that. Yes? Okay. So then that is your purpose of being here. So when we say the bodhisattva, you can think of Prince Siddhartha was a bodhisattva. And in many lives before that, he was also a bodhisattva. He didn't know that he was a bodhisattva. That's the difference between him and you. He didn't know that he was a bodhisattva until the day that he attained Buddhahood. He didn't know that to be Buddha is to have a state of mind which does not experience a sense of self. He didn't know that. It was only upon achieving that state of Buddhahood did he realize that this sense of self is the root of all suffering. Jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, vyadipi dukkha, maranampi dukkha, sankittena panchupadana khanda dukkha. These were his realizations. Until then, he did not know that a sense of self was the problem. That is what he went in pursuit of. So you see, the difference between that bodhisattva and us bodhisattvas is we know where we are heading. That's why we are called Shravaka Buddhas. Actually, that is what we are aspiring to. Shravaka Buddhahood. A Shravaka who is not yet a Buddha is someone who has listened to the teaching of the Buddha, listened to the teaching of someone who has achieved a state of mind that does not experience a sense of self. So that is what a Buddha is. Once you have listened to the teaching of someone who has achieved a state of mind that does not or is free from the sense of self, such teaching gets you or puts you on the path to achieving the same liberation, the same goals. So how many bodhisattvas do we have here in this hall today? Hopefully all of you are bodhisattvas. But you only qualify to be a bodhisattva if that is your ambition. So if your ambition is anything else other than to achieve a state of mind that does not experience a sense of self, then you cannot be called a bodhisattva. You are some other kind of sattva. See, there are various kinds of sattva. Manusattva. You've heard of that, right? Manusattva. Tirisan sattva. Preta sattva. Deva sattva. Not Devadatta. Devasatta, Brahma, Satta. They're all Sattas. But you can't include Ajata Satta, that is a different one. Ajata, he earned that nickname because he was born into a family or he himself was to commit patricide, meaning to take the life of his own father. One who was to be born, who was going to be an arch enemy of his father. And hence he earned the nickname Ajata Satta. There, Satta does not mean sentient being. It means the enemy of. So that's a different meaning. But then what I'm referring to here, this Sattva is a state of mind, ladies and gentlemen. But when we think of Satta, we immediately think of four-legged beasts. That's why you go to the Sattu. Sattva what? Vata. The garden of Sattas. What is this then? So where's the Sattva Vata? In the evil, is it? What's here? This is all Sattva. So a garden where you have Sattva. So that's why that Sattva is Tirisan Sattva. Tirisan because this word Tirisan means horizontal. Tirachana Yoni is the name of the abode in which animals are born. Four-legged beasts. Doesn't necessarily have to be four-legged. They're the animal realm. Tirachana is to be horizontal as opposed to vertical. So most animals that you can think of, any animals that come to mind, they usually are horizontal, aren't they, in their orientation? So that is how they have earned themselves that name. But it is their conduct that got them there in the first place. So a Tirachana Yoni being wasn't always one. Most of the time, and most likely they were, prior to that, they were beings who walked on two legs. Beware. Most beings who walk on two legs don't walk on two legs for very long. It is because when one's mind is defiled, they tend to conduct themselves, they can tend to do sins and unmeritorious deeds, which brings them embarrassment, which is embarrassing, shame, guilt. So when you have shame, guilt, fear, embarrassment, how do you hold yourself? Upright, head high, or head hung low, right? So you tend to incline towards the ground because it is embarrassment, fear, shame, all of that, guilt. When you know you've done something wrong or someone points it out to you, what is your orientation at that time? You tend to look down, right? It is an admission of guilt. So Tirachana Yoni is an abode of beings whose time it is now to repent, to be remorseful, to regret the sins and bad, evil deeds of their past. That is how they have earned themselves that nature of being horizontal as opposed to vertical. But once they have paid for their sins, and then they are reminded again of any meritorious deed that they might have done, a meritorious deed enough, powerful enough, potent enough to bring them back into the blissful plane, then they may be born again as humans, or as devas, or as brahmas for that matter. So these are not topics I often talk with you about, but from time to time it's good to remind ourselves of the realities that exist beyond what meets the eye. Because, it's one thing to live in denial. But my proposition is always this to individuals who inquire as to the validity of some of these things is, my proposal is always this. If this is not true, and if this is just mere fantasy, well, so be it, because you haven't lost anything. Because the ask is, let's be good in our conduct. Let's not harm others, hurt others. Let's not be evil. Let's not do sins. Nothing lost, right? But what's the flip side of it? If you choose to ignore it, if you choose to ignore that there are consequences, and then you conduct yourself and be sinful, and be bad, and be evil, then if the price that you have to pay is that, then that's something to be wary of. So there's nothing to lose and everything to gain. From where I stand, there's nothing to lose and everything to gain in at least considering that the animal realm, the preta realm, the realm of the demigods, right? These realms actually do exist. There's nothing to lose. No disadvantage there. It's like saying, if you take that exit at the back of the room, right? Imagine I said that there were people stood outside to attack you. So don't take that exit, just take this one. Well, there's nothing to lose. It's not like you have no exit out of this room when you want to leave it. So you might as well take this and avoid that. The thing is, if you take that exit and then you're attacked by whoever stood outside waiting to attack whoever leaves this room, chances are they're not going to come back and tell you the plight that they had to face once they left the room. Because the moment they leave the room, they're going to be attacked and perhaps killed. This is the plight of the situation. When those beings who live amongst us as humans, but then they die and go to the hells, as they call it, unfortunately they don't always come back to let us know what they have to suffer today, and therefore to warn us not to be sinful. Actually, if that were possible, then this world would be a much better place than it is today. But there are ways and means in which you can communicate with them. No, you can't give them a Skype call, or you can't WhatsApp them. You can't do that. And don't ask me for their number, I don't have that either. That is not how you communicate with them, but you don't need to worry about how to communicate with them. I'm sharing with you stories and things that have been said about them by those who have seen the state that such beings have to endure as a result of their own bad deeds. You see, the matter is this, right? If it is only fair that we must all suffer the consequences of our own actions, as well as enjoy the rewards of our own actions, right? Then it is only fair that those who do good are rewarded, and those who do bad have to repent, have to pay the consequences of those actions. It is no one else's doing that we have to pay the price for. We and us alone are wholly, completely and entirely responsible for our actions. And this is why it is also imperative that while you have the chance, ladies and gentlemen, you aspire to become a Buddha. At least become a stream enterer. Because the state of being a stream enterer is one who has once and for all freed him or herself from the four great hells. It is a case where any sins that you might have committed up until that point, from your previous lives, all up to that point, any sins that you might have committed which have the potency to bring you birth in the four great hells, all of that is null and void. That's it. No talk about it after that. You're free from it, all. It's kind of like a get out of jail free card. Having been gifted with human life, I can't think of a better aspiration to have. You know the ways in which that you would have conducted yourself in those difficult times. We haven't always been saints, and you know that. Even while you're here, you're good, but perhaps when you go back home, between now and next Sunday, there may be occasions where your environment tests you, your family tests you, your colleagues test you, your neighbors test you, strangers test you, and you don't know what they might be able to trigger, what sort of emotional response they might be able to trigger. Can you truly put your hand up and say that I have never killed? I'm not talking about human beings. I don't think there's a single soul in this room that is entirely innocent of killing, taking another's life. How many mosquitoes would you have swapped? And then when you have a rodent or rat infestation? Either I'm out or they're out, and it's never I'm out, right? This is my house. I built it. It's my place. And this place ain't too big enough for the two of us. You say to the rats, you say to the cockroaches. You don't cohabit with them. You stay means they have to go. So first you try asking them nicely. Mr. Ratty, please will you leave me in peace? But if they start getting into your cupboards, into your drawers, eating your biscuits and your cakes and your puddings and your clothes and various other precious items that you have bought for yourself, earned for yourself, then if they don't learn a lesson, you have to teach them a lesson the hard way. A lesson that they shall never forget. How can they forget? Because they're gone. They're dead. We think that we have the right to enjoy happiness in our life. We think that we have the right to take another's. For some reason, we human beings seem to think that we have the right to do that. If they make your life inconvenient, then you can kill them. It's not just about chasing them away. You can kill them. Just think about that. What right we have to think like that? Do you remember when a mosquito landed on your arm, leg, wherever, some part of your body? You only looked at it after you did what? Yes. So you will only have seen a dead mosquito most of the time on your body. Because you thought it was only right. It's sucking my blood. Right? How dare it? No permission was granted. It's sucking my blood, so I have every right to kill it. Perhaps today you don't do this. You simply chase it away. Even if it comes round and bites you 100 times, you'll still chase it away. Or maybe you'll try and catch it and take it outside and leave it out. Maybe you'll net your windows and doors so that they don't come in. Right? Perhaps you have some measures to deter them from coming in. But just go back a few years, maybe a good few years, we are all guilty of that. Who here can say that I have never killed a mosquito? Because that is what we were taught to do. We saw others do it. We saw our elders do it. We saw our friends do it. We saw it done on TV. So it was okay to do that. Taking the life of another seemed like a very normal thing to do. Because we thought it was fair and square. This is a battle between me and the mosquito. The strongest has to win. So if they were small enough for you to squash them, then that is what you did. How many cockroaches have you killed? How many mosquitoes have you killed? How many flies have you swatted? These are all murders, not human murders, but these are all, that's your count. We all have a count. And we must not think, ladies and gentlemen, that these sins will be easily forgiven. Because if pranagahata, the volition of taking another life, arises in your mind, then that is a sin that you have committed. It is registered in the universe somewhere. What you give is what you get. And it doesn't matter whether you were an adult or whether you were a child. If you knew that you were killing, then that was killing. All you had to do was to have the intention to take a knife. If you had that intention, then that was done. Sometimes kids, when they go out and play, which is not something that happens very often today because kids don't go out and play today, right? They play on their video games. But those days when kids used to go out and play and you have earthworms and things like that, like you want to experiment. And they don't understand that taking a life is taking a life. The size of that life does not matter. Because what is the size of life? Is there such a thing called the size of a life? Are you a big life and a kitten a small life somehow? Life is life. So along these lines, you will also ask me, Swamina, so then what about, is it not better to be a vegetarian? Although we don't kill, we are responsible for their deaths. Whether you choose to be a vegetarian or not is your choice. That's a very personal choice. Even when the proposition was made to the Buddha as to whether monks should henceforth become vegetarians, even at that point the Buddha said, no, let them choose. See, it is about his own monks, he said this, not about the lay community. He said if monks should choose to be vegetarians, then let them be, and if they choose not to, then let them be. That was his decision on that. Because what he said was, it is not about whether you eat meat or not. It's about whether you take a life. To take a life is sin. To eat what is already dead, that is not a sin. But for health reasons or for whatever other reasons, maybe for environmental reasons, right? If you feel that it is unfair that one must eat another, right? If you feel that way, then of course it's down to personal choice. So that is not what I'm talking about. Excuse me. That is not what I'm talking about, and it is not a discussion about whether you should become a vegetarian or remain a non-vegetarian or whatever. That's your personal choice, and it has really nothing to do with sins or unmeritorious deeds. But if you are the one who takes a life and then serves it to another, the sin is not in eating it, but the sin is in what? Killing. So please make sure that for whatever reason, you're not the one who has to take a life. For whatever reason, you don't find yourself taking a life. And it has to come to that point, ladies and gentlemen. So you might ask me, Swaminatha, now we are householders, right? We have homes to maintain. I have my furniture to maintain. I have to keep my property. I have to keep my possessions. I have to keep my food. How can you expect me to let rodents run around the house, let cockroaches here and there, right? And how can you expect us to live like that? See, this is the thing. This teaching is to help you to attain Nibbāna. It's not about how you can live a happy life on this planet. Not entirely about that. If your question is how you can coexist with other sentient beings and have your part and have your say and have your home, your house, ultimately all these your things are all fabrications of the mind, aren't they anyway? What's your house? Your house does not know that it's yours. The rats don't know that it's yours. They think it's their house, don't they? So whose house is it then? Just because you have a deed that was registered at the land registry or wherever that says that this is your house, perhaps the rats have their own. Maybe they've paid their stamp duty as well somewhere. How do you know? And you ask the cockroaches, they will say that it's their house. Ask your dog whether they live in your house or you live in theirs. See, possession, belonging is only a mental concept. It's only a mental concept. So whenever you tell yourself that this is my house, my rules, and I have to be able to live the way I want, these are all your own thoughts. It's only valid in your own little world. The universe is not kind to you, not when you start thinking like that. We must begin to understand and appreciate that these are the universal truths. Just because you think something is true doesn't make it a universal truth. You might think that today is Saturday, doesn't make today a Saturday. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, to be honest with you, almost 99% of the things that you think are true are not. Most of what you think is true is based on the concept that you are an entity. Just as you listen to this, come up with some facts that you think is true or that you think are true. You might say, I am a man, I am a woman. See, that's also not true. You might say, my name is so and so. That's also not true, that's only a conventional truth. Then you will say, my house is in somewhere. See, that is also not true because it's not your house. It's the house that you think is yours. That's also not true. Then you say, I'm married to this person or that person. That's also not true because your idea of marriage, that this feeling that you have someone in this world who belongs to you, is also not true. See, 99% of what you think is not true. The universe is not kind to your perception of it. The universe only responds to the truth. We can't mend and bend the rules to our likes and desires. We can't do that. That's why life is a lot of suffering for you. That's why in life you have to suffer so much. Can you think of a single day you've spent in your life in which you did not have to suffer one bit? Every single day there was something or the other that caused you an amount of suffering, more or less. If it's not the fear of something, it was the worry of something. Or you grieved losing something. Or it was stress. Or it was anxiety. Or it was disappointment. Something or the other always takes over. In your agenda for the day, your plan for the day, you might as well write suffer for a few minutes because that's what you do. And why is that? Is a question that's worth asking. Why is it that there's never been a day throughout my life where I did not have to suffer at all? Why wasn't there a single day I didn't have to suffer at all? That is because you are always at odds with nature. Your mind is always at odds with nature. Nature wants to have it one way, you want to have it another. Nature says that we all belong to the universe. You say, no. My family belongs to me. Nature says that nothing in this world belongs to anyone. You say, no. My car belongs to me. My house belongs to me. My children belong to me. My watch belongs to me. My phone belongs to me. But the thing is, that is not true. But you think that they belong to you. Because you think they belong to you, now when nature decides to have it its way, or her way, if you want to call it her, when nature decides to have it her way, for example, take your car from you, take that phone from you, take your wife from you, who suffers? You suffer. When nature decides it's time to take your children from you, it will. Didn't nature decide when it was time to take your parents away from you? How much protesting stopped it from doing it? Was there anything you could do to stop that from happening? When it decided it was time to take your mother from you, didn't nature do it? When nature decided that it was time your father got a cancer, didn't nature have it its own way? When nature decided that it was time your mother was paralyzed, didn't nature have it its own way? What were you able to do in that situation? The best you could have done was carry her to the hospital and try and show her to the doctors and maybe try and get some treatment. Even then, only if it was nature's will, that your mother was to recover, could you have done something to regain her health. Whereas if that was not in nature's plan, ladies and gentlemen, no matter how much you try, no matter what effort you exert, that would not have been possible. That's why sometimes the best doctors in the world cannot save some people. That's why some of the best doctors in the world cannot help you recover from some illnesses. You might wonder, how come two people who have the same illness, one is recovered, the other isn't, sometimes treated by the same doctor? That may be because nature does not have a plan in place for your recovery. Nature's plan is a different one. So the day that we choose to let nature have its way is the day that nature will let you be at peace. This is the friction that you always experience, ladies and gentlemen. Friction. If you bang your head on a wall, which one of the two breaks? Try it. Which one? Is it not obvious? Because the brick wall doesn't give way. It's fixed. It's the way it is meant to be. Your head has to give way. So the impact, the force of that impact has to be absorbed by your body. The wall does nothing, right? In the same way, ladies and gentlemen, when nature is there and it wants to have a certain way, and if you decide to have your own way, imagine that that is a situation where you're trying to bang your head on a brick wall. The brick wall is never going to move out of the way and let you pass. Your head is going to have to make way. So whenever you suffer, imagine this in your mind. Have this mental picture. Whenever you're suffering, it's because you're banging your head against nature, where nature is that brick wall. It's never going to give way. This is this friction that we experience. That is why the Buddhas come into this world and they teach us how to be at peace with nature. Now, here's the thing. To be at peace with nature, ladies and gentlemen, all you have to do is to understand the workings of nature. All you have to do is to understand the characteristics of nature. The moment you have understood the characteristics of nature, now you have understood nature. So the moment you have understood nature, now you are one with nature. You don't go against it. The three characteristics that we spoke about last week, do you remember them? Anicca, Dukkha and Anatta. These are the three characteristics of what? Nature. This is the lesson they should have included in science at school, grade 6. But this is a lesson that you had to wait until you were 60 to learn. But don't despair, it's never too little too late. As long as you're on this side of death, you're good. As long as you're this side of death, you're good. The characteristics of nature is what the Buddhas teach. Now we learn physics, that is also studying nature. We learn chemistry. We study nature. Yeah? Anicca, Dukkha and Anatta, the teachings of the Buddha, is also a study of nature. It's a natural science. It's a natural science. Whereas physics and chemistry help us to interact with the physical world, our bodies to interact with the physical world, Anicca, Dukkha and Anatta help our minds to interact with the physical world. That's what it does. You could include biology in that if you like. So biology, physics and chemistry, what we typically tend to call the three natural sciences, right? These three teach us how our physical existence, our physical bodies must interact with the physical world. Anicca, Dukkha and Anatta, which is the philosophy taught by the Buddhas, teaches our minds how it should interact with the physical world. So that's why this is a science. I often refer to this as a science of the mind. If you can understand this science, if you allow yourself to understand this science, ladies and gentlemen, you will be able to be at peace with nature. Now take this as an example. So I've got a bad throat these days. Physics, chemistry and biology can now be used to help me feel better, to help me recover. Anicca, Dukkha and Anatta is not going to help me there. For that I need to understand physics, chemistry and biology. That's why someone fetched me some warm water and not cold water. That is their understanding of natural sciences. But if that gives me mental suffering, now the physical world is in a certain state, but if my mind is not prepared to accept that, that is because my mind has not understood the nature of nature, the characteristics of nature, and therefore internally, mentally, I will suffer. But Anicca, Dukkha and Anatta, if my mind can instill this knowledge, acquire this knowledge, then I will not have to suffer because of this. How? Physically or mentally? Mentally. But physically, that suffering might endure until it is cured. Now, there may be people here who have various aches and pains in various parts of your bodies. Back aches, headaches, stomach aches. Every part of the body is waiting to ache, right? And you're not getting any younger, are you? So every part of the body is just waiting to ache. So these aches can sometimes be debilitating. Now if you had one of those really bad backaches, right, and it's been terrible, you just can't get up on your feet and it's just a constant throbbing pain in some part of your body, let's say your back or your head, or when you have a migraine, right? That can really be a downer, and it can completely ruin your day if you let it. You don't have to be miserable just because you have a pain in your body. To be miserable is a state of mind, it's not a state of body. I want you to be in a state where every cell of your body could be crying out in pain, screaming out in pain, but your mind should be at peace. It should have accepted that pain and said, and be able to say, if that is what it is, then let it be. It's possible, ladies and gentlemen, it's possible. This is not some lofty ambition. This is actually very much possible. One day you might find yourself on fire, literally. If such a day shall come, you have to be at a state where your mind is still at peace. Because at that time, if your mind is in a great sense of fear or anger, right, you're about to die with a lot of bad will, with a lot of bad thoughts in your mind. And if you're about to die with a lot of pain, anger, sorrow, grief, these are not positive states of mind. So wherever you're going to be born next will probably not end up being a good place. See, I have a lot of sympathy for a lot of elderly people who should have listened to the Dhamma in their early years, but didn't, because they were far too busy earning, breaking their backs working, toiling themselves, sacrificing every comfort that they had. I have a lot of sympathy for them. Because here's what happens. Come the latter part of their lives, where now they're not strong enough, they don't have the vitality, they don't have the physical endurance to sit down, listen to a sermon, or to go to a preaching, whatever. They come to the latter part of their lives and now they're bedridden. And all they can think of is their backaches, their headaches, their knee aches, their leg aches, that aches, this aches, and that aches. And that's all they can think of. And on top of that, if they also end up getting a cancer, that's all they can think of. So just imagine a life, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years of a life, constantly in pain. I don't mean the physical pain. I mean the internalizing of that pain. And therefore, mentally, all they can think of is that pain. Pain, 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 pain. That's all they can think of. And therefore, their mind is miserable. They have no joy, no happiness, no fulfillment, no satisfaction. Their children cannot bring them any joy anymore. They can't think of what they have and rejoice in that either, because they're constantly reminded about the physical pains that they have to endure, as a result of which they're always very miserable. These are lives that are waiting to go to bad places. It's such a pity. Such a pity. And this is why, while you still can, you have to do this. And understand the Dhamma while you still can. Don't wait until it's too late. You have to get to a point, ladies and gentlemen, where, like I said, every cell of your body might be screaming out in pain, but your mind should be at peace. Because it is the mental state that your mind is in that determines where you're going to be born next, not the physical state. Do you understand the responsibility that lay on your shoulders? Not for me, not for anyone else, not for your family. I'm talking about the responsibility that you have unto yourselves. Did you know that just because you were born human doesn't mean you will die human? You really got to think about that. Just because you were born human doesn't mean you're going to die human. Human is a state of mind, manusat. That's why it's called manusat bhava. You were born human in this life because in your previous life, the last few chittas that you consumed had humanness in them. That was their temperament. That was their temperament. So you could not have thought about something evil. It could not have been a sin that was consuming your mind, your thought cycles. It must have been something good, something wholesome. Whatever. I cannot say exactly what it was, but it must have been something good, something wholesome. That is what you would have thought during the last few chittas of your previous life. And therefore you were born human. So then if you want to be at least born human again, what assurance must you be able to give yourself? That in the last few chittas of this life, you will at least have human thoughts. Thoughts that are not defiled. Thoughts that are not inclined towards the four great hells. Greed, jealousy, thoughts that are free from these sort of things. Anger. I know a lot of people, when they're elderly, they're always angry. I have seen people like that. I used to work at a care home. A lot of people, when they're elderly, they're very angry all the time, very agitated, very on the edge, or rather on edge. Both on the edge and on edge. Very angry. Angry because of many reasons. One, their friends and families, they've left them. They sacrificed a lifetime looking after their families, their children, but towards the end of their lives, no one's there to look after them. And so now they're very annoyed about that, very angry about that. How come they have chosen to betray me? When I was there, every step of the way, these are the tales that they tell us. We as care workers, we are the people who get to hear their most intimate stories. These stories which they wish to vent because of their frustration. They want to vent this and there's no one there to listen to these stories. So when it's our tea time, that's what we used to do. Cup of tea in hand, you go and sit down with the clients and then they tell us their stories. It's almost part of the job, really. To be a cushion, to lend a ear, listen to what they want to share with us. It's part of the care. We don't have to. It's our time, it's a break time, so you can just take your tea and go for a stroll. But we chose to do that. Because actually that is what they really wanted. That is what they really wanted, and no money could buy that. They wanted someone who was compassionate enough to listen to their story. And so when we walked up to them and sat down with them, stroked their head, held their hand and said, "Talk to me. What's on your mind? What's bothering you?" And then they start. If you let them speak long enough, they really start opening up and they share some of the most intimate secrets that they've held, and a lot of the time the regrets, the remorse that they have, and the anger that they have. There's a lot of anger, especially in elderly people. I'm telling this to you for two reasons, ladies and gentlemen. None of us are getting any younger. I don't want you to find yourself in that situation. Number one. Number two, there may be elderly people in your life, and it is your duty to take care of them. So do your part. Perhaps putting them into the best care home, where they give premium care, might not be what they're looking for. Maybe all they need is just their son or their daughter by their side, holding their hand and listening to the story that they have to tell you. Perhaps that's all they need. Otherwise, they're going to die with a lot of anger and hate in their hearts. Once they're dead, not all the Dorospirikara puja you do can do them any good after that. That can only help them if they're born as a preta. But if that opportunity is gone, then not all the Dorospirikara puja can help them at all. It'll help you, it won't help them. These are the bitter truths. But remember, of the two reasons, number one is the most important reason, not number two. Number one is the most important reason. What is that? We are not getting any younger. You had better learn how to give up expectations on your children before it's too late. You had better learn that. You had better learn how to give up expectations on your siblings. You had better learn that before it's too late. Don't expect your sons and your daughters to be by your side, to hold your hand, because they'll be busy, and the way that the world is going, you don't know what society is going to be like and where they're going to be in the next 10 years' time. Don't expect. Expectation is the greatest sin of all. Because once you expect, you can't stop anger arising in your mind. Because the moment expectation arises, desire takes over. When desires cannot be fulfilled, what comes next? Aversion, anger. And when anger elevates, what do you get next? And it escalates, you get hate. Expectation is the problem. That's why anicca, dukkha and anatta is your only solution. I don't know why these halls are not filled with people who know that they're going to die one day. I don't get it. What is better to do on a Sunday morning than to try and understand the Dhamma? I don't get it. What good is it to enjoy today if tomorrow you're going to die and live for another 1,000,000 years in the four great hells? What good is that, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you? When you have a headache, just put everything else to aside. When you have a really bad headache or a migraine, you know how terrible that is, right? Some people shoot themselves in the head because they just can't bear the pain of a migraine. I've known people who've done that. When it just becomes unbearable. Some people choose euthanasia when they can't bear the pain, the physical pain that they have to endure. And when they can't bear that pain, they choose to end their life. That's physical pain. And then there's mental pain. When a mother feels that she's betrayed, when a wife feels that she's betrayed, when a man feels that he's betrayed, and the love of his life, the love of her life, has decided to elope and betray this man. How many people do you find on the rail tracks? You only get to hear what's on the news. And that's only what happens in this country. But how many people die every day, ladies and gentlemen? Just out of sheer frustration, disappointment, anger, resentment, hatred, jumping in front of a running train, jumping off a bridge, or drinking poison, hanging themselves to death. See, the funny thing is, right? None of them thought that they would do it a week ago. None of them thought that they would do it to themselves a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. None of them. Just like you lot. You don't think that you would ever do that, right? Right? Yes. They said the same. If a mother finds out one day that her daughter has run away with a man, 16-year-old girl, let's say, who's run away with a 45-year-old man. That's just argument's sake. If a mother finds out one day about that, and then later gets to know that she's become pregnant, and then she comes back home, and the man's missing. If that mother has no Dhamma as refuge, what hope does she have? What assurance can you give that while the daughter will stay alive, the mother will as well? How can she now face society? These are the problems that will take over her mind. If a father finds out that his son has been taking drugs for the last 5 years, and he has always maintained a certain reputation in society, and now he has to face up to people because it's all over the news. Just imagine yourself as that father. Imagine yourself, put yourself in the shoes of that mother. Just imagine the frustration, the grief that just completely consumes them. None of them imagined that they would find themselves in that plight a week ago, a year ago. And therefore they didn't feel that they had to take refuge in the Dhamma. So what did they do? They went around earning money, building houses, buying property, right? Saving up for the children. Because they did not fulfill the responsibility that they had to themselves. Therefore, when the whole world starts crippling down and falling down on its knees, and now your happiness was dependent on all of those things being in your favor, what happens then? They lose their mind. It's not once or twice people have brought to the monastery mothers, fathers who lost their mind because they just couldn't bear the pain that they had to go through. They just couldn't endure the pain, the suffering that they had to go through because things turned out in ways that they had never imagined. And then they come and ask us, Swaminatha, can you help her now? And she's a lunatic. And now they ask her, can you help her now? Whereas if you'd asked the children to bring the mother in before, they'd be, no, we are busy. We are busy. We have work to go to. We have the children to look after. There are parties we have to go to. There's work engagement. So how do I have the time to bring my mother, bring my father? Where do I have the time to do that? It's a much worse world out there than you think it is. You may only know about your little world. Your little world that is like a ticking time bomb. You're not invincible, please don't think you are. You're not invincible. You live your life in society, ladies and gentlemen, you are very vulnerable. Please don't forget that. Because you all have minds which are susceptible to drushti. And your children are the most susceptible out of all. Because they still don't know right from wrong. And they're still learning. And when the mind is vexed, all the mind needs is the shortest path out of that. The path of least resistance out of that. You know this is true for you as well. When you feel peckish, what do? Sit down and contemplate anicca dukkha anatta? Or just walk to the kitchen and open the fridge? You know what you do. Don't nod here. Just pretend like you are all saints. You know what you do. So you know, even as a bodhisattva, you know how difficult it is to contemplate the Dhamma when it is when it is the only thing that has to be done. So then think about a mind that has no Dhamma as refuge. What hope do they have? Now, I feel a lot for especially young people these days, children in schools, right, in society. There are piranhas everywhere. People just waiting to get hold of your children. Drugs is everywhere. Sex is everywhere. It's all over the place. And if your child doesn't know right from wrong, if you don't know right from wrong, then you can't teach your children about it. I don't know where to start and where to end this conversation, because everywhere I look, all I can see are people suffering and people about to suffer. Everyone's just hanging by a very thin thread, just like a drop of dew, that morning drop of dew on the edge of a blade of grass. You don't know when your time is done. And I don't mean about death, I mean about the next time someone comes and grasps you. Someone comes and destroys your life. A lot of young people these days, we are getting a lot of information. Children coming into the monastery. We have a rehabilitation center at the monastery. There are a lot of young people there, they come and share with us how they fell into the trap. None of them were born addicts. They were all born to good mothers, good fathers, good parents, just like your children. Whenever I say just like your children, you need to understand what I mean by that. They were all born to good parents. None of them had that in mind. But then they went to school. Away from the care, the guardianship of their parents. Away from the watchful eye of their parents. You don't know what your children do when they're at school, do you? Let's be honest. You only know what they come home and tell you. And then you know what's on their report card. That's all you know. You can't monitor them. When they start using foul language, then you know that they are sitting next to the wrong kind of people, wrong kind of children. Then you go to the teacher, you tell the teacher, my child is now starting to use foul language, please can you do something about it? Then the teacher says, okay, we'll shift your child to some other class, next to some other child. And the next thing you know, now he comes home, he doesn't use foul language, but he's always on the internet watching porn. Well, what's the answer? What are you going to do next? Go back to the teacher again and say, no, teacher, can you put him back where he was? At least back then he wasn't interested in grandmothers. And now he is. What do you do then? And all these trends that emerge in other parts of the world, it's only one click away, right? Only one click away. If you don't know what porn is, go and ask your children, they'll explain to you. They'll ask you, Mom, where shall we get started? Now it's mainstream stuff. And the problem I have is not the instant relief that they seek out of that, but the indoctrination that happens in their minds. And then they grow up. They grow up with that. And then they want to get into a relationship. And out of that relationship, they expect nothing more than that. Then there's no dignity in that relationship, no respect, no real love. The other day, someone showed me that now in Sri Lanka, I'll probably edit this part out of the sermon. In Sri Lanka now, there are groups apparently on various social media platforms where people are inviting others to share their partners, married partners. It's here now. Ta-da! It's here now. It emerged in some other part of the world. We don't need to name and shame, but it emerged somewhere else in the world, and now it's here. Young couples, and they put their details. Someone showed me a poster on some social media platform saying, see Swami Maharaj, wife 27, husband 28. And they said they're a genuine married couple apparently, and what they want is to wife swap. Apparently 3 is better than 2. I don't know what that means. Maybe you do. This is what it has come to. No Dhamma. A lot of the time between young people these days, we see that it's not love anymore. It's not sacrifice anymore. It's not respect anymore. It's just desire for the flesh. That's what it is. Sorry to put it so bluntly. Desire for the flesh. That's why when those desires cannot be satisfied, they look elsewhere. No wonder relationships don't last. And no wonder most people have more than one relationship. And everyone pretends like there's no problem. But that's the skeleton in the closet. No one talks about it. People are exploring their you know what. Apparently that's something to be explored. I mean, that's apparently why people are born human, so they can explore their ality. There's a 3-letter word comes before that. Apparently that's what being human is for. So you can explore these things. My point is not whether it is right or wrong. My point is, look at how young lives are being wasted. What hope is there if someone dies while they're engaged in that kind of act? If someone dies while they're engaged in that sort of act, ladies and gentlemen, you can forget being born human again. Anything that you cannot do with your head held high, anything that you cannot do without embarrassment, without shame, without guilt, without fear, let's hope you don't die doing something like that. You'll ask me then, Swami Nahan, but come on, we must live lay lives and do lay things. Surely there are 2 sets of rules for monks and then there's one for the lay people. I say, I don't make the rules. If I did, I would. If it was down to me, I would change the whole 5 precepts. Panatipata, let's keep it that way. Adinadana, let's keep it that way. Kame sumichachara, we'll change it. Kame onatarangchara. I mean, if it were down to me, I would change it. But it's not down to me. I can only share the truths with you. I can only share the facts with you. You have to take responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, for what's going to happen to you. That's what I'm saying. Each and every one of you individually are responsible for what's going to happen to you. Just think about the stray dogs that you see on the side of the roads. Right? Who cares about them? Who cares about them? Who cares for them? From time to time you'll have some charities, right? They'll pick up stray dogs from the road and go and give them shelter and look after them. Right? But that's a rarity. Right? You've seen how they run across the roads and how vehicles just run over them and the dust is all you hear. No one, they don't even care to stop. Because it's no one's dog. And the dog just runs crying. And then from there on, they're limping all their life. And then when another dog comes into the neighborhood, now, that dog that used to be the alpha male, now it cannot run to save its life, so then it just becomes prey. And soon enough, that animal is going to die. And that's not a glorious or a respectable death. You know how it works. They will often have to go and walk to some side of the road, and after that people just kicking them and throwing rocks at them, and they'll die hungry and they'll waste away. Right? And then flies and worms and all sorts of things start getting into their wounds and those wounds start festering. It's just as painful. It's no less painful than it is to you. All wounds are painful to those who bear it. But who treats them? No one does. So what shall we do now? Let's all get up and go find all those stray dogs. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, see, if you are ever born a stray dog, just look at what happens to them. Imagine yourself like that. Why do you think to yourself that is never going to happen to you? It's not magic to be born like that. It's logic. If your conduct is such, then that will be the consequence of your actions. What you throw into the universe boomerangs back at you. If you treat others like dogs, then you will be born one, so that others end up treating you like that. That's why it's important to always treat others with respect, dignity. Just because you have a maid at home doesn't mean you can just ill-treat them, mistreat them. Just because you're a boss doesn't mean you can just dog people around and treat them like animals. I'll tell you what, most of those stray dogs used to be bosses. Who had no respect, dignity towards others, no kindness, no generosity. And who used the upper hand that they had to get things done their way. I know in plenty of offices, young women are abused. Actually, you don't have to be young, right, to be abused. Even 60 goes, right? How many stories have you heard? Because they're desperate, they're not happy at home, because they don't have a homely life. There's no relationship at home, no affection, no love between husband and wife. So the boss comes to work. The man's at work, right? He just bosses people around. And he's stressed out. So when he wants relief from his stress, then the secretary gets another job. And somehow she has to feed her family. Maybe she comes from a poor family, so she has to hold that job, so she can't speak up. She can't go and complain that she's being victimized or being abused at the workplace. And then she has to endure. Now she becomes his personal secretary. Personal, with air quotes, personal. See, that's dogging people around. Abusing your power is a terrible thing to do. It's a terrible thing to do. Abusing your power is a terrible thing to do. Because if you abuse your power, ladies and gentlemen, you will someday be a victim at the feet of someone who has power over you, and they will abuse the hell out of you. And when that day comes, I'm sorry, it's just not going to cut it. Where's the Dhamma? Because people are far too busy. They're busy educating themselves, getting their degrees, getting their higher degrees, getting their PhDs, trying to climb the career ladder, trying to get to the pinnacle of their career ladder, becoming top of the batch, first in the world, all island, all world, whatever, winning those medals, earning those cups, right? I'm not saying that there's necessarily something bad about that. That's okay. If you have potential, it's fine. But what I'm saying is, some part of your life, some part of the time that you have while you're still alive must be invested in your own salvation. If you don't do that, no one's going to do it for you. Every action that you take is recorded somewhere. Once it's done, it's done. I'm sorry, I wish I could turn back the clock. If I could turn back the clock, I'd be starting with mine, not yours. But as I was saying, just observe the stray dogs on the streets, right? If you were born as one, just have a look at what you have to suffer. Don't think that every dog enjoys a happy life like your pet dog at home. Perhaps the dog that you keep at home, it has a jolly good life, maybe better life than many human beings. But that's just your dog at home. That dog was still a dog and it did something, some dog deed to be born a dog. But at least it had some merits, and as a result of which it was born to your family. And now it has become your pet, your family pet. That was a merit that it had done. But it's still a dog. When it cries, how do you know what it's crying for? Whether it's hungry, whether it has an ache or pain in some part of the body, how do you know? At least as a human being, you can tell the doctor where it hurts, right? How does the dog say that? It's helpless. And in some families when they take these pets, they castrate them, don't they? So do you ask the dog? Do you ask the cat? Do you mind, sir? So, people say that it's for their own good. So if someone just picked you up and took you somewhere and then they did the same to you, and they said that's for your own good. These are not things for us to decide. Be very careful how you deal with the universe, because it keeps a record of every action you take. And the universe never forgets. They're like elephants. They never forget. There's a saying, right? Elephants never forget. Yeah, so does the universe. It never forgets. It remembers every single thing you've done, right from the beginning of samsara. You can't even remember what you did 2 weeks ago, but the universe remembers every single thing you've done. And it just waits for the right opportunity to strike, either good or bad. Whenever the conditions are right, that vipaka is drawn from your vipaka pool. Actually, what we do when we say we live, what we're really doing is always creating the conditions for a specific kind of vipaka to be drawn, to come to fruition. That's all that's happening. Even right now, that's what's happening. Right now, that's what's happening. But because you have a sense of self within you, you perform karma. As a result of that karma, that energy that comes as vipaka is not just dispersed back into the universe, but you do what you call bhava and put it back into a karmic seed and throw it back into the universe. So there's a recycling process that you're doing right now, out of ignorance and attachment. Because you identify that vipaka as you. And then you have to pay the price again. And that, therefore samsara is born. That's how samsara works. That's why it's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that when vipaka comes to you, you have to be in your right mindset. If your mind is defiled when those vipakas come at you, sometimes even the best of vipakas, you can turn around and make something evil and vicious out of it and throw it back out. Say for instance, someone brings you a glass of water, just as a very simple example, right? Someone brings you a glass of water, warm water, or a cup of tea. This is very often to be heard in and found in homes. A mother brings a glass of water or a tea to the child. He or she picks it up and finds it too sweet, too hot, right? And what do people do nowadays? Because they have lost respect for parents, right? They have lost any regard for their parents. And then they just blast back at the mother. You think you can drink this stuff? Yes. You know the word I was just about to say. The word that is for female dog, that one. There are homes where children call their mother that. They don't realize that what they're doing are sowing the seeds to be born one. They don't realize that. In those moments, it is not the mother who earns my sympathy. It's the child. Because the mother has already done her bad deeds to hear this kind of language from her children. Right? She's already done her bad deeds and now it's just time for her to suffer the consequences. All she has to do is to be patient. Understand the Dhamma if possible and just remain and be patient. Accept it equanimously. For that she needs refuge of the Dhamma. But the child, on the other hand, the child does not know who he or she is speaking to, and the words that are being used are some of the worst possible words to be uttered by a child to their parents. Right? So if you've ever been on the receiving end of that from your own children, for your children's sake, ladies and gentlemen, do something about it. For your children's sake. If you really love them, do something about it. They need rehabilitation, is all I can say. They need to be rehabilitated. Psychologically, mentally rehabilitated. Drugs only kills you once. But such words when uttered, that can bring you a samsara time of infernal suffering. You've got to do something about it. And the more you move to Colombo and around and its suburbs, the more you get to hear about this kind of thing, which is a pity. Because you get to be indoctrinated by a lot of things that are going on around the world. Very technologically advanced we are. Perhaps in the rural villages they don't get this much because there's not so much indoctrination. Children don't know that that is a word that you can use to call your mother. But then there are teledramas, serials and all sorts that you can watch that originate from other parts of the world. I won't say which part because it's not nice to do that. So other parts of the world where it's okay to call your mother that, among your friends at least. So once it's okay among your friends, then the next thing to do is to call it to her face. Why not? Because in some parts of the world, you call your mother and father by their names, right? In some parts of the world, that's how it's done. So, parents are at the same level as anyone else. You call your friends by their name, you call your parents by their name. They're just parents. It's their duty to bring you into this world, and now that they've done that, now it's their duty to feed you. It's very transactional. If you gave me life, now feed me. Give me shelter. Look after me. It's what you're supposed to do. It's your duty. So do it then. That's the kind of sentiment that some children have. And it's a growing trend. So be very careful what sort of TV your children watch. I mean, I'll say these things, but I don't know to what extent you can control these actually. Because how often can you be at home, keeping a watchful eye over everything that your child watches? Because nowadays, you don't even need satellite TV. You got the internet, you got catch up, right? So there's everything you need. You have torrents, you can download stuff. There's everything, right? The internet is basically anything and everything. They don't moderate what's right or wrong for your child. There'll be websites that say you have to be 18 before you are allowed to enter. What do you think your child does? He's only 16. You tell me. I'm 16. I'm not supposed to enter this site. Okay, close. You think he does that? What do you think he was born to? An arahant? What do? They just put a fake birthday. That's it. So it doesn't stop them. Here's what it does. It makes it even more enticing. It makes it even more enticing. You're not allowed to watch this until you're 18. What is it? Not going to tell you until you're 18. Now they're even more curious. That's the thing, your children are always one step ahead. The internet service providers and all, they can do all sorts to bar access to pornographic websites and all sorts, right? But children are always way advanced and they have access to technology. They know that all you need is a VPN and then you're on the internet. You can do whatever the heck you want. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And your child knows that. Because they spend time with other children. They learn, this is what they learn, how to circumnavigate all these controls that have been put in place. You can't take that phone away from them. They need it apparently because they need to do their homework on it. Right? They have to keep up to date with their friends. And if you don't have a phone, you are mocked. Right? And then they become laughingstock at school and among their friends. So you have to have a phone on you. So once the phone comes into the hand, then comes all the other stuff on there. And there's an app for everything now. There's texting and then there's sexting, right? You don't know. Ask your boy when you get back home. They'll tell you. There's an app for everything, I tell you. And you think they're always on Wikipedia. Oh, how naive. So whenever they're on the internet, they're on Wikipedia, right? Because whenever you walk into the room, they're on Wikipedia. How studious your son is. And the people who create this stuff, they make it easy for people to hide their tracks. They make it very easy for people to hide their tracks. See, apparently those days when you had a video of some sort, cartoons playing, you know what I mean by cartoons, right? When you had a cartoon playing, and if you had to quickly minimize the browser, and so you bring up Wikipedia again, right? If you didn't pause the video, then you still get the sound. So then you're caught red-handed. But now, if you go in a certain mode in the browser and you play the video, all you have to do is minimize it and the video pauses. So there's no sound coming from the speakers, waiting for the mother to leave the room again. So you can minimize the Wikipedia, bring that browser back up again, and you can resume from where you stopped. See, technology. Can I ask you a question? How often do you, mother and father, right, along with a board of advisors, counselors, monks, priests, whoever's, rabbis, right, sit around the dining table and talk about how you can give a good upbringing to your child? How often do you do that? Yes, right answer. But there are forums, there are meetings in large boardrooms where people get paid millions, if not billions, marketing experts, technology experts, cybersecurity experts, right? Psychologists, they sit down together and discuss how they can infiltrate your homes and put stuff into your children's minds. Some of the brightest minds on earth, they get together and they talk about how they can plant the seeds of porn into your children's minds and how they can get drugs into your children's bodies. They plan this stuff. They strategize. I ask you, mother, father, when do you as parents sit together with help from other people who know best, talk about how you can save your children? I forget, you are too busy because you have to get to work. Because you have to fund their education. Because as soon as they're done with A-levels, they have to go somewhere, some other country, where they can go and do their degree. So they have to fund their education, right? You have to build another house for them. You have to buy some land for them. In the meantime, there are people in boardrooms, in dark rooms, in dark boardrooms, behind closed doors. And they get together and they discuss what the next genre of porn should be. What is the next trend that they should set? And which platform is best for that? How do you get the marketing out? And what is the demographic, the age demographic? Which countries they should target? Which age groups they should target? Which schools they should target? People are actively planning how they can send your children to hell. Did you hear me? That's what they do. They're actively planning how they can send your children to hell. But you as a mother endured 9 months of pain and then labor on top of that to bring that child into this human world, to give them a chance to go to the Sugati and to enter heaven. Do you think that's enough? That's what 16 years ago. Sometimes it seems, does it not, like that is the only thing you did to give them a chance to heaven? The only thing you did was to bring them into a human life? That you planned. Yes, but that was the only thing that was planned. Because before that they were not human. They were a Gandhabba, waiting for a mother's womb. You planned a pregnancy and the child was born into a human body, that was the only thing you planned to get them to heaven. Ever since then, the whole world has been plotting as to how to take that child from you and then put them back into hell. What are you doing? Who's going to take responsibility for these things? I can only do what I can do. I can talk to you. I can talk to your children. I can look after your children if you bring them to me. See, you don't trust your child with me, but you trust them with the internet, don't you? If I asked you to leave your child with me for 3 months, maybe you won't trust me. But over the last 5 years, of the last 5 years gone, how much of that time do you think your child has spent on the internet? If you work out how much they spend per day, then times that by the last 5 years, you will work out that they probably have spent more than half of that year on the internet. Doesn't have to be sat by the desk on their computer. On their phones, they have the internet. On their watches, they have the internet. If you're okay with that, then so be it. That's why I said earlier on, everywhere I look, it just seems like this whole thing is just collapsing. I've almost lost hope. I don't mean on you. I almost lost hope that we can do something to reverse this plight. I just feel like within our own lives we will end up, within our own lifetimes we'll end up seeing the aftermath of all the damage that the last few years have done to our nation, to our children, to the whole world. Advancement of technology does not mean advancement of human values and virtues and wisdom. And people don't want you to think about the truth, ladies and gentlemen, because if you thought about the truth, if you thought about what was actually going on, if you opened your eyes to reality, then there would be an uprising. And people don't want that. So what do? They make sure that you have plenty of things to watch to please your eyes. There's plenty to please your ears. There's plenty to please your tongue. There's plenty to please your body. Right? So your 5 senses are always satisfied. That's how they keep you preoccupied. Unbeknown to you, your lives are being ruined, and so are the lives of your children. The one chance they had to come into this human world and then to take this as a run-up to heaven, that opportunity is disappearing right in front of your very eyes. There will come a day where perhaps today they're young enough and they will listen to you when you say, Uta, let's go to the temple today. I want you to sit down with Swami Narayan. Maybe at least with hesitation they might listen to you because they have to. But it will come a point where they'll say, hey, my life is my life. Right? Just because you gave birth to me doesn't mean you get to call the shots. I'm an independent person. So I'll do what I like to do. You mind your own business. Thank you very much. That day you won't feel like a mother. That day you won't feel like a mother. That day you will feel that you have failed as a mother. When that day comes, you will feel like you have failed as a father. But then it will be too late. Then it will be very difficult to turn things around. Maybe even impossible. It's like drugs. If you catch it before it becomes all-consuming and overwhelming, you might be able to turn it around. But if it's too late, sometimes it's very difficult to turn it around. They feel like they need it for their existence. Their survival is dependent on it. They feel like that. Ice is only 10 minutes, a 10-minute call away. From anywhere in and around Colombo and the suburbs, in 10 minutes you can have it delivered to your doorstep. 10 minutes. That's how strong the network is. Ice. You know what I mean by ice? It's a drug. One of the most harmful drugs that have been invented in recent times. It decays you from the inside. I bet if we found a number, in 10 minutes we can have it delivered. People who know and who consume these things, they tell us. So, your efforts, they almost mock us. You're doing a rehabilitation center, right, Swaminathan? Yes. That's the response we get. For every young youth we recover, 100 become victim. We know that this is not a battle that we can win. Sometimes we wonder why we bother. Sometimes we really do wonder why we bother. But then we have to remind ourselves, every life is worth saving. So we do. That's why at the center, we have at the monastery, it's not just come in, go. We ask them to stay for at least 3 to 6 months, because in that time we give them the teaching, we give them the doctrine. We try and rehabilitate them once and for all, so that they never have to resort and they never have to go back to take in that substances. Otherwise there's no point in rehabilitation. You rehabilitate someone today, 2 weeks later they're back in doing it. What's the point? The effort put into rehabilitating them. "10 minutes. 10 minutes away, that's it. There's an app for everything, so there's probably an app for that as well. What's it called? Ice Baby or something. It's a terrible state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen. You really need to fathom the size of this. It's almost impossible to turn things around now. So why do I say this then, you might wonder? Am I just trying to eat up the time that we have? I'm saying this because you have to take individual responsibility. Each and every one of you. You have to take responsibility for your own self. Don't expect the world to be kind to you. Don't expect the government to come and save you. It's not that they're bad. It's not that the next government is going to be better than this one, so let's wait for that government. It's not like that. No government can save you. A government is here to save a country, not you. Right? The school principal is there to save the school. The class teacher is there to save the class, not your child. You as parents, your householders, you are there to save the family, the unit as a family. So then who's going to save your child? He or she, himself, herself has to save. That's why I always say, give them something that they can use to save themselves. Self-help is the way, all the way. Self-help. Isn't that why the Buddha says, Dhammang vinanatti pita cha mata, tameva tanang saranam patitta. No mother, no father can save you. Only the Dhamma can do that. So instill the Dhamma. Base yourself in the Dhamma. Protect yourself with the Dhamma. Tasma hi bhokicca manyapahaya sunata dhareta charata dhamme. Therefore, put aside all these other preoccupations that you have. These are not my words, ladies and gentlemen. Why don't you heed them? Why is something else more important to you than your Nibbana? I ask you. Huh? How much more money do you need to earn? How much more money do you need to earn to be happy? You tell me the amount and prove it to me, I'll give you that money. But you've got to prove it to me that that amount of money is going to make you happy. If you can prove it to me that this amount of money is going to make you happy, you come and tell me, I'll write a check for you. And hand that money over to you. And then you put aside earning money and come and set yourself, invest your life, whatever life left you have, or whatever life you have left, to work in on your own salvation. How many more years of your life do you want to invest in this? Nonsense. You know that this is not the answer. How many years of life evidence do you have now to prove to yourself the fact that money is not the answer? Education is not the answer. None of these things are the answer. Only the Dhamma is the answer. See, that's why I just quoted the Buddha. Tasma hi bhokicca manyapahaya. Set aside all these other preoccupations. Everything that takes up your time. Because this is not a life that you got to go earn a living, get an education, build houses, buy property. This is not a life that you got for that. This life you earned yourself with great difficulty to attain Nibbana. At least to ensure for yourself that you will be born into a Sugati in your next birth. We are more than halfway into the Buddha Sasana now, you know that. If 5,000 years is the lifetime of this Buddha Sasana, 2,500 years would have been half of it, and now we are over that. If you live for 100 years, what's left is about another 22 lifetimes. So if in your next 22 lives, let's call it 25, just for simplicity's sake, if in the next 25 lifetimes you are not born into the Buddha Sasana, that's it. How many more years we have left? 2,500, right? Less than that. But I'm favoring on your side here. Let's assume we have 2,500 years left. 100 years of a life each time. Then how many lives do you have? 25. So if in the next 25 lifetimes you are lucky to be born where the Buddha Sasana prevails, then you might be able to experience the Sasana and earn its greatest fruits, which is what you have now. But if those 25 lifetimes pass you by, and then wherever you are going to be born, whether that is in Sri Lanka, if Sri Lanka exists by that time, or in some other part of the world, or in some other part of the universe, God bless you. Of that 5,000 years, you are now in the sasana. One lifetime you got in the sasana. Perhaps, I don't know, I'm just guessing here. Maybe we all get one chance in the sasana. And maybe this is that chance. Maybe this is that chance. Perhaps the next time we come across a sasana is going to be in the next Buddha's era. That's in many incalculable eons later. I mean, it's a joke. That's a joke. Besides, if you don't understand the value of the sasana now, what guarantee is that you will understand it then? If you see a diamond on the floor and you kick it while you're walking, and you don't take a lesson in diamonds, the next time you see an even more precious diamond, what are you going to do? Kick it again. So, the Buddha sasana has just appeared in front of you, and you kick it because you have not understood what the sasana is and what it is capable of giving to you. So the next time you come across the sasana, what are you going to do again? Kick it. This is not admonishment or accusation. This is me calling out to you to take responsibility for your own lives. I can't do that. If I could, I would. Because this is a chitta, that is a chitta, that is a chitta, that is a chitta, and so is that. If these are all chittas, then my job is not just to save this chitta, but to save chittas. Otherwise I wouldn't come here to do this sermon. Therefore, if I could, I would. But I can't. Only you can. And that's why you don't. I don't know the ins and outs of your lives, ladies and gentlemen, so I can only call. I can't demand. But I will call. Your phone's ringing. You've got to choose whether you want to answer it or not. Can you hear it ring? I'm on the line. Come on, Trinity, pick up the phone. Where are those Neos and Trinities? When are you going to pick up the phone? The sasana is here to save you. But you have to volunteer to be saved. The sasana can't save you by force. It's not like the Goni Billa that comes to take your children away. The sasana doesn't work like that. You have to volunteer yourself. So look around you. When you get back home today, look at those stray dogs along the streets. And just look at them. And imagine what life must be like to a stray dog. What if you are born into the four great hells? What if you are born into the animal realm, which is the least painful of all the realms? What if you are born into that? You can't say that even the dog that you have at home has a merry time, jolly time. You know, if it's hungry now and you've all gone out, it has to wait until you get back. Then. And if the dog wants to go behind a female dog, then. But they're all in a pack, and there's the alpha dog, then it's life or death. But when it gets the urge, it has to. Because who's there to tell it right from wrong? And talk to it and explain the consequences of its actions. So then it goes out. Goes in the pack, goes after the dog, and then the other dog comes in because it wants to have his share, and then grabs it by the neck, and that's it. Your dog's a goner. It's a dog. Doesn't have rights. Once in a while, watch this. Just take some time to watch these documentaries, things that happen in the jungles and the forests. How animals are always, how they become prey to predators. Deer, zebra, these animals. What if you're born one of them? Don't say it's not possible. The world is anicca. Anything is possible. They don't kill you first and then eat, right? They eat you while you're alive. Just imagine the pain that animal has to endure. And there's not a moment where it can be at peace, even if it goes to get some water from the watering pool. It always has to watch out. Every little sound could be a threat. That could be the last time it gets to drink some water. But you don't have to be like that because you're a human being. You just take some water to a glass, you drink it. You are never under threat, you don't feel under threat. My ask is, why don't you use that freedom, that privilege, to actually achieve what you have to achieve? When is it enough, ladies and gentlemen, for you? When are you going to draw that line and say, yep, that's enough? I've earned enough, I've educated myself enough, I've lived enough now, I've got enough in the bank, I have a house, I have property, I have a car, right, enough. Now, at least henceforth, let me put my life, whatever I have left in my life, to achieving the actual gain and benefit that I came into this world to achieve, the ultimate goal. You need to do that for yourselves. I can only motivate you. I can encourage you, I can inspire you. But I can't get you up on your feet and walk for you. That you must do. It's not too late because you're all still alive. You must put in more than what you're putting in now. Whatever, because there's always a little bit more you can do. It's like after you had a heavy meal, right? Someone says, can I serve you some more? I said, no, I'm full. He says, I've got some nice pudding. Okay, give me just a little bit. I see, there's always room, right? Like how Andre had curd. You know the story? If it's something you really desire, there's always room for more. Otherwise, how do you have a heavy meal and then take a beverage? A tea, coffee or something? Where does that go? To your lungs? That still goes to your stomach. So there's still room. So if you want room, you can make it. So in the same way, you might say that, Swaminathan, I'm doing the best I can. But what I'm saying is there's probably still more you can do. There's probably still more you could do. Then do that. I never want these sermons to become just lectures that happen every Sunday. This is not meant to be academic. This is not for scholars. This is for people who live real lives. Real people who live real lives, who have real problems. I'm not trying to make doctors or professors out of you of the Dhamma. Then we would have an Abhidhamma class or something. I can teach you that. But what's the point? You'll still die and go to the Four-Gate Hills. What's the point? Learning the Abhidhamma is not the answer. Realizing the Dhamma is the answer. Realizing that you are not a self, but only a sense of self. That is the first step. If you have firmly grasped that insight, that wisdom, if you have firmly grasped that insight with no shadow of a doubt, if in any situation where you feel desire, lust, anger, greed, jealousy, any of these emotions, you can process those emotions and understand that these are merely internal reflexes to external stimuli. And that beauty is never something that the eye sees. It's only in the mind. If at least you can begin to process that. And then when you eat your food, you understand that none of your experiences are actually things that come from the food. Not the color, not the taste, not the smell, not the feel, not the texture. None of it actually comes from the food. These are all mental creations. Therefore, this whole experience that you're having right now is a mental fabrication. If at least you can understand that, ladies and gentlemen, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. But hardly anyone understands that. I don't mean you. I mean generally, hardly anyone understands that. People eat like food is going out of fashion because they think food is, it's everything to them. Sensual delight is all, they feel that is what they were born for. Hedonism, that is what they were born for. People think that. They dedicate themselves to that kind of lifestyle. Pleasing their eyes, pleasing their ears, pleasing their tongues, pleasing their bodies. At every other corner you see on the streets, now you have I don't know how much of this I can actually say in sermons. Those 3-letter centers. You know what they are. Starts with S and ends with A. They're not meditation centers, are they? Let's assume people are going there to get therapeutic treatments. Maybe that's therapy. Let's assume. The closer you get to Colombo, the more of those places you see. When I used to live in Colombo, when I was younger, we had none of them. At least they were behind closed doors. No one talked about those things. It was an embarrassment. But now it's mainstream. I have nothing against the people who run those centers or who work at those centers. I have nothing against anyone because I don't have a personal agenda to be against anyone or anything. I'm in love with the universe. So I don't hate anyone or despise anyone or have anything against anyone. But what I do have a problem with is defilements. Because this chitta, that chitta, that chitta, that chitta, that chitta, the very chitta at the back, these are all chittas. If we are all one consciousness, right? If you suffer, ladies and gentlemen, that means I suffer. What's the difference? If you suffer, it means I suffer. I'm not going to say that because you suffer, I suffer. That's what your husband tells you. Or your mother tells you. That is not what I mean. What I mean is if we are all one consciousness, and in this pool of consciousness, if there's even a modicum of suffering somewhere, then those ripples, they reverberate. And I sense that. So then we have to do something about that. To the people who run those centers, to the people who work at those centers, to the people who patronize those centers. They all need help. No one's bad. People don't get bad, bad get people. That's why you must always look at people through compassion and through loving kindness, metta. People don't get bad, bad gets people. That's why you've got to save people from bad. It's like you don't get cancer, cancer gets you. So what does the doctor do? Tries to save you from the cancer, right? So Dhamma is the treatment. You're not bad. People aren't bad. But badness has got you. Raga, Desha, Moha, they have got you. Ignorance and attachment, they've got you. So if your freedom, your happiness comes from freedom from ignorance and attachment, then where must you be right now? Where should you be going tomorrow? How many other countries must you travel to before you can find that freedom? How many more degrees must you have to do? How much more must you earn? How many more properties must you buy? How many more houses must you build? Tell me, and I'll help you do that. If you can truly convince me that you're on a path to achieving ultimate freedom, ultimate bliss, unconditional happiness, and what you're doing is the right thing to do, you come and tell me, convince me of that, and I will help you do it, because that's what I want for you as well. Whoever says otherwise is just ignorant. If your uncle tells you that that is not what you're supposed to do, Puta, because I know the law, Puta, what you're supposed to do is to go and get another degree, Puta, right? If your uncle says that, then your uncle's wrong, he's ignorant. If your aunt says that, no, first you go earn yourself a good wage, this is not enough. Become a millionaire first, and then you go into the sasana, right? Then your aunt has just lost the plot. She needs help just as much as you do. If your grandmother says that, your grandfather says that, your mother says that, your father says that, your uncle, your brother says that, sister says that, whoever says that, they're just ignorant. It's ignorant speaking. You don't heed me, you heed ignorance. You heed the voice of ignorance. Like earlier I said, you don't like to leave your children with me, but you let them loose on the internet. I'm okay with whatever you choose to do, okay? I'm okay. But I have to learn to find peace with whatever you do. I can't be shaken inside, regardless of what goes on outside. So it has to come to a point where, even if you decide to go and ruin your lives and destroy your lives, I have to still learn to be okay with that. So, that's okay for me, but that's not okay for you. So please wake up to the reality that life is not kind. Life is simply serving your vipaka from your previous karma. That's all life is doing to you. Today you are fortunate to have noble association of the Mahasangha. Go back a few years and ask yourself whether you had these regular sessions. You know what you used to do on Sundays. Your lives changed because some karma that you'd done in the past, some good karma came to fruition. Because the environment was right, and before the environment was right, it didn't come to fruition either. As soon as the environment came to fruition, then that vipakas began to drop. And so that is where you are today. But all of this can change just like that. If you haven't understood that here we talk the truth, then someone can come and plant something into your minds. Someone can come and put some rubbish into your heads and say, don't go to that place, they're just trying to get something out of you. This is all just a gimmick. Swami says, sweet talks you, and then they give you a free sandwich at the end, right? That's how they lure you in. And then they take your money, or they take something, they take whatever. So someone will come and put something into your heads. If you haven't understood the Dhamma by then beware. It happened in the Buddha's time, and it will happen today. It happened in the Buddha's time as well, so who am I to say that it won't happen today? And I don't mind that. People can badmouth me as much as they like. That's okay, because I have bad-mouthed many people in my life in samsara. Right? I've not always been a saint. So I've bad-mouthed enough and more people, and so now it's my time to be on the receiving end of all that bad-mouthing. But they won't badmouth me with me, they'll come and say those things to you. That's the problem. If you're gullible enough to listen to that and then take that as truth, then what will happen is you will turn your vehicle out of this path and onto some other track. If that track gets you to Nibbana, then sadhu sadhu, no problem with that at all. But if that takes you back to samsara, then I'm sorry. So please be very mindful, be very careful. You're treading a very narrow path. It's very easy to be thrown off this path. This is not a path any of us have traveled before either. You don't become a Sotapanna twice. So you don't become a Sakruddhagami twice, you don't become an Anagami twice, you don't become an Arahant twice either. You don't become an Aryan twice. So this is not something we have done before. Therefore, it's very easy to throw you off track. Therefore, you must also be careful to whom you go and talk about what you do here on Sundays. If it's the right person, the right people, then they'll encourage you. They might even come along with you. If it's not for them, that's okay, right? As long as they say, no, it's not for me, but you carry on doing what you're doing, that's okay. But sometimes people won't stop there. Because, and I'll tell you why. Because there may be times in samsara where you have pulled people out of the track. That's why I always say, parents, if your child ever wishes to become a monk, a nun, or walk the noble path, don't you dare, for your sake, pull them out of that. Not for my sake. For your sake, don't you dare pull them out of that path, because the day you want to walk that path, someone will do the same to you. Life is not kind. Whatever you throw out, boomerangs back at you. Give or deny, that is God, right? G-O-D. What you give, you are given. What you deny, you are denied. If you give someone the chance to walk the noble path, you are given that chance. If you deny someone the path to walk the noble path, you are most definitely denied that. That's why we always say, do some punya karma, do some merits, help others to walk this noble path. Support that endeavor, which is what you're doing here. You're looking after each other, inviting others to come along to listen to the Dhamma, making sure that people are looked after and they're comfortable while they're here. You offer alms to the Mahasangha. You make pirikad offerings. You give shelter to the Mahasangha. You feed the Mahasangha. These are all offerings that you make to help and to make the path to Nibbāna, to create the path to Nibbāna, to make it easier to get to Nibbāna. So whatever efforts you make to make the path to Nibbāna easier, Nibbāna becomes easier to you. That's how it works. That's one reason why I preach the Dhamma. See how selfish I am? Because what is it I'm doing as I preach the Dhamma? I cleared the path to Nibbāna for you, right? So what must be the boomerang back at me? The same. But what if I come here and tell you, there's a nice movie in town, shall we all go watch that? Or there's a nice restaurant, the food is just top notch, shall we go try that? And I indulge you in sensuality, meaning I pull you out of the track of Nibbāna. Every time I indulge you in sensuality, that is me uttering a falsehood about the world to you. That is musavada. That is actually musavada. So it doesn't matter whether you come here and say musavada, veramani, sikkhapada, samadhyami, but every time you actually indulge people and encourage people and entice people to enjoy the sensual delight, sensual lust, right? You're putting them back into samsara. Because these are all lies. So when you do that to others, the same happens to you. That's why Guru Handru once used to say, Only open your mouth to eat. At all other times, keep your mouth shut. Because we do more harm to ourselves. Actually, more harm is done to ourselves not by what we put into ourselves, but what we put out of our mouths. If you put something poisonous into you, you only die once. But if you throw out something poisonous, then that could ruin your entire samsara. Shall I give you a friendly piece of advice? Speak as little as you can. Speak as little as you can. Because in the world in which you live, ladies and gentlemen, what you really want to say, people don't want to hear. Yes or no? What you really want to say, people don't want to hear. You want to tell people to refrain from indulgences. You want to tell people to understand the Dhamma. You want to tell people to encourage them to practice this asana in whatever way they can. People don't want to hear that. People say, you lost it, what are you talking about? Man, going to Sunday sermons. Before this, you didn't used to talk like this. What's wrong with you? This guy's gone nuts. People will start saying these things and then they will learn more demerit by saying that as well. They will dishonor you and they will desecrate the noble path and they will learn more demerits by doing that. So there's no point saying that either. Then the only other thing to say is to go along with them and say, shall we go there, shall we do this, shall we do that, shall we enjoy, shall we have a party, this, that, five senses and indulging in them. Every time you say that, you are walking yourself out of the path of Nibbana, as well as them. So what's the best thing to do with your mouth? Keep it shut. Yes. So shut up. Shut up and hurry up, ladies and gentlemen. I'm on the line. If you're going to answer the call, you answer it. It's ringing. It'll keep ringing until I can keep this receiver in my hand. One day I won't have the energy to carry it, and then it'll drop. And the line will go dead. Hopefully someone else will pick it up and they will be on the line and it will still keep ringing on your end. And someone else will after that, someone else will after that, someone else will after that for the next 2,500 years. At that point, the last one who drops this receiver, right, and the line goes dead, that will be dead for a long time. If you pick up the call in good time, then your purpose can be served. So, answer the call. Ring, ring. Answer the call. Think about what we have talked about today, please. Look out for those stray dogs and imagine yourself on the streets. Here you don't see many cows and other cattle animals, not in Colombo. But as you go to the rural areas, there's plenty of them as well. Even there are plenty. Stray animals. If you see a snake at home, what do? Pet it. Usually people throw kerosene at it. You may not, you might just catch it and take it somewhere and release it into the wild. But in many homes, this is what I was taught to do when I was younger. Even when you see a Garandia, which is one of the most harmless of snakes, right? What you're supposed to do is throw some kerosene at it. Just imagine that. What right do we have? It's just living in nature. Just because we have put up a wall and called this is my land and this is the boundary of my land, just because it enters your land, does it mean that you now have the power, the authority, the right to hurt that animal? Who says it's your land? Who says it's your land? There's just a deed, a title deed that says on the south, on the north, on the east and the west, these are these boundaries and that's your land. That's just a piece of paper. What if they got that wrong? Who does the earth belong to? You? Madam? Sir? The earth belongs to nature. Just as much as you do. You belong to nature. So the snake, it belongs to nature. What right do you have to hurt or harm the property of nature? Don't mess with nature, for nature shall mess with you. And nature is not a force you can reckon with. She's big. She's much bigger than you are. She's much bolder than you are. And she's ferocious when she wants to be. She can topple you down like that. One tsunami is needed to bring down a whole island. That's nature for you. So don't mess with nature. Our only part to play with nature is to accept it and to surrender to nature. Those who learn to surrender to nature are those who can be happy. If you choose to stand against nature, nature will knock you down whether you like it or not. Because there's always only one person who learns a lesson. Us, not nature. Nature is defiant. You don't be. Don't you be. So do you understand your role? Our role as intelligent human beings is to accept nature. Therefore to be one with nature. Not stand against nature. Because when nature begins to show its force, because you want to try and go against it, that will be a lesson that you will regret to learn. So please, ladies and gentlemen, open your eyes, realize what's going on around you. Ask yourself this question: what were you born for? Do what's right by you. Do what's right by your children. There are people in large meeting rooms getting paid heavy checks whose job it is to decide, to figure out, to strategize the quickest path for your children to go to hell. And they're doing that as we speak. In some rooms they'll be cooking up new recipes for drugs. In other rooms they'll be working out how best to market it and how best to distribute it. In other rooms they'll be talking about what different kinds of porn they can bring in and what different kinds of audio, video, media and channels they can use to infiltrate your homes and your children's innocent minds and to plant the seed of desire and lust into each and every one of them. It doesn't matter whether it's a boy or girl. I used to think that girls were not affected by such things, and then I realized I was wrong. When I grew up as a boy, I thought that girls were really innocent. Girls? I thought they didn't watch porn. I thought they didn't have lust. I thought they were like born saints and they live as saints and they die as saints. That's what I thought. Because I only looked at my mother and I thought, everyone was like my mother. But only later I realized how my mother brought me into, gave me life. But, I personally really thought that, these are problems just boys had. Like pornography and all sorts. But then later I learned, when we started doing counseling and things like that, and how, your daughters and all, they started to become anagarikas, and then we started to listen to their stories, and they would come and confess about the demons that lay in their own closets. We later we can realize, good heavens, some of them have bigger problems than we did. Many young women are struggling with inferiority complexities. Inferiority complex is a huge thing among girls. Huge. Mainly to do with looks. It's enormous, the size of that problem. Mainly to do with looks, height, size, all that. Competition is big among them. Jealousy, big. Size of houses. This is nothing against girls. I'm just saying, these are the things I've come to learn from having looked into the feminine mind and studied it. Because people come and confess the things that they have in their minds. And when it comes to things like pornography and that, they have taken equal share. Lust, desire, many cannot be satisfied. That's why the Dhamma is the only refuge. I always tell our Anagarika, those at the monastery, let's try and kill the woman inside you. That is their ambition. Not so that you will be born as men, but you will not be born at all. Some deficiency in the human mind, some deficiency, some mental, psychological deficiency in the human mind tends to manifest as a feminine birth. It's greater in women than in men. And that deficiency they try to fulfill by associating with the other gender. So the answer then is not to go find the right partner. The answer is to fill that void with the Dhamma. Exactly. Girls today are becoming victims of their own defilements, and technology cannot help. Technology only makes it easier for them to satisfy their needs. It's not the answer. In some countries, indulging in some of those desires is forbidden. Some parts of the world, it's more relaxed, a lot more relaxed. But in other parts of the world, it's very much more restricted. You know some of those countries, I don't need to name them. But that doesn't mean girls there don't have such desires. They're still humans, aren't they? Still the same minds, same ignorance, same attachment, same drishti, same desires. So, they need help. No one's innocent. And no one's guilty. Everyone needs the Dhamma. So take the Dhamma and give the Dhamma as much as you can. That is why we work on these projects like Little Britain. It's our way to try and learn the language that people speak so that we can take the Dhamma to them. You know, what if I could speak Arabic? Just as well as I spoke English. If I could speak Arabic, then I could speak to men and women, both, in those countries, provided they want to listen to me. What if I could speak Polish? What if I could speak German? What if I could speak Cantonese? You're here because you like what you hear. Because in this language I'm able to convey these ideas in ways that you can understand them, right? That is because we speak the same language almost natively. So if I could speak all those other languages, then the Dhamma would be accessible to many more people. Each and every one who suffers because of ignorance and attachment and who needs the Dhamma. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, remember the day I asked you to be part of this, I said, wish for it to be a success. That thought in itself is a blessing, not just to the project, but also to you. Whenever you see someone trying to do something good, wish for it to be a success. Wish them success. Wish them well. Just that wish itself is a huge blessing, not just to those who are wished, but to those who make the wish. Right, let's conclude for today. So next week we don't have a sermon, the 2nd November. We have the Katina on the 2nd and the Pirit the night before. So you're welcome to visit the monastery from around 1, because we have a sermon. So the event starts at around 1 o'clock. And there'll be a sermon till around 4, a Sinhalese sermon. After that, we will stop for a pause for about an hour, and Pirit starts. So we'll have the overnight Pirit chanting. And then the following morning, you will be bringing the Katina Dussa, which is the cloth, the Katina cloth from the Anagarika Rame. So you can all join the procession as you carry the Katina Dussa from there to the monastery. Once it arrives at the monastery, you can make a robe out of it. You can all take part in sewing it, the robe, and then dyeing the robe. And then in the afternoon, you will have the opportunity to offer it to the Mahasangha, who will accept the robe from you and then pass it on to who the Mahasangha as a community decides is most suitable to bear that robe. So that's the matter for the Sangha. They get together and they make their decision. And then, of course, after that, Guru Handra will be very kind to speak to all of us and give us some of his thoughts as to how we can make use of that meritorious deed to help us on our journey to Nibbana. And then the event will conclude with that. So you're all welcome. And until the 30th, you can also weave the Katina cloth, which is also close to the Anagarika Rame. Give me a show of hands if you've been there now. Ah, good. Well done. So those who haven't, it's still there, it's still going on. Kueni is doing that. We call her Kueni, affectionately named. She's always done it from the day we started preparing the Katina cloth at the monastery. She's very good at that. She's very skilled at weaving thread into cloth. And she has a machine just for that. If you've visited, you've seen it. I think there's a video you might have seen. So please do take part in that as well. Before I forget. Just before we conclude, I have a little video to show you. Not last week, but the week before. A little bird told me that there were some familiar faces at the monastery for a Dakkineyo. So unfortunately, I was not able to attend that day. But we have a short video capturing some of the meritorious activities of the day. So I would like you to watch that and rejoice in that meritorious deed. And after that, we will conclude for today. See, that would not be possible if you didn't come together. When we work together, we can do so much. And that is evidence of that. It's not just as Swaminathan says, not just the Anagarika. Everyone. You must learn to rejoice in the collective effort of everyone. I think you can already do that. Become better at that. With every meritorious deed you get involved in, appreciate the collective effort of everyone. Then it doesn't matter what your part was, right? When people are selfish, they only look for their part. What was my part? If my part was a small part, then they only get a little bit of the merits. Now, when you watch those photos, your mind would have said, where am I? Where is I? Where is I? Where am I? Where am I? Where am I? Where am I? No, me. That's a tendency the mind has, because it always identifies a self and it wants to find the self. But if you can just understand that is all consciousness, and it's all just energy and nature, now good was happening there. It doesn't matter who was there, right? That is what I want to encourage and want you all to be able to do. So much good is happening in the world right now as we speak. Become someone who can rejoice in all that goodness. That is a gift that you can give to yourselves. And finally, on the 1st of November, the morning of the 1st of November, Maitri Andhru will be doing a sermon in German at Royal Institute, the Havelock Town branch. So if you have friends or family, or if you yourself understand German, unfortunately I don't, otherwise I would be there, then you are welcome to make your way there. I'm informed that there will be some officials who will be joining from the embassy as well. They've been very impressed by the work that Maitri Andhru and several of the German members of our family, if I can call them that. Like I said the other day, we seem to have a very strong connection with Germany. I don't know where that's coming from, but we've been embracing that. And they visited the monastery on more than one occasion, and they're very impressed by the work we're doing, so they want to support us. And I think some of them will be there for the sermon. One of our Anagarika Duas will also be giving a talk in German, which is, for me, I think the highlight. Maitri Andhru just speaking in German is no big deal. But this Dua, who spoke no German at all when she first became an Anagarika, none whatsoever, she didn't even know the alphabet. And then to be able to speak without referring to notes or cues or anything, that's just remarkable. This learning languages is such a fabulously wonderful thing to do. The reason being this, and I always, when I speak to our Swamin Vahanses and Anagarika Mahatmas, I tell them this. When we speak a language, we are doing something completely selfless. See, Guru Andhru preaches in Sinhala, he preaches in English, he preaches in Hindi, he preaches in Telugu. As long as we understand Sinhalese, and maybe a little bit of English, that's enough for us to understand every word he says, right? So if anyone goes the extra mile to learn another language, there's nothing that he or she gets out of it. Nothing. Now if when I go and work in the kitchen, say I help cook something in the kitchen, that is maybe to feed the masses, but I can also take part in that. It also says my hunger. If I go and clean the washrooms, then others can also use it, but I can also use it. Whereas if I learn a language, what do I get out of it? Absolutely nothing. It's a very selfless act, this learning another language. Especially if it's done for the purpose of spreading the Dhamma and helping people to attain Nibbāna. So if you have plans to work closer with the monastery in some way or the other, now or in the future, I encourage you to try and learn another language. If you already do, then that's a great asset. If you don't, try and learn one. Because the more languages you know, the more people to whom you can pass this gift. Maybe just casually, as in, you meet someone on a train, on the tube, in a bus, and if you strike a conversation. If you speak their language, you can tell them about the monastery. You can tell them about the website. You can tell them the truth that you have understood. It's a very selfless act. So, selflessness all the way. Right, let's transfer the merits and bring the sermon to a close. Let us all take a moment then to transfer the merits that we have all acquired today by making offerings to the infinite virtues of the Noble Triple Gem, by creating a conducive environment for all to come along and practice the Dhamma, as well as by making offerings to the noble virtues of the Triple Gem. Let us transfer these messages to the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, upasakas and upasikas, who have since time immemorial protected and preserved the sublime teachings of the Buddha, and passed it down through generations of the noble lineage in the form of the Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us today to study, understand, and comprehend the Dhamma. Let us take a moment to transfer this message to all the monks and nuns resident throughout the world, including in your hometown, as well as the Mahanayakas, the Anunayakas throughout the world of all the chapters who have sacrificed their lives to protect the Sasana. Let us transfer this message to my teacher Guru Swami Mahanse, as well as all the monks resident at the monastery, and the Anagarikas and Anagarikas attached to the monastery. Let us take a moment to transfer this message to those who make great efforts to disseminate the teachings of the Buddha, be that by transliterating these talks, share them out with others, or inviting others to join them. May they all rejoice in these merits. Let us also transfer this message to friends of our monastery, who for the sake of merits to help them attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana, continue to sustain the Mahasangha. This includes all of you who provide the Mahasangha with shelter, alms, robes, and medicines, as well as those who pass on their know-how and continue to extend their well wishes. May they all rejoice in this merits, and by the power of these merits, may they all be healed of any physical and mental ailments, and overcoming obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer this message to our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, and nieces, our friends, our acquaintances, our employers and our employees, our teachers, our friends, and anyone who've helped us, supported us, and assisted us in any way, shape, or form. May they all rejoice in this medicine, and by the power of these medicine, may they also be freed of any physical and mental ailments and overcoming obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer this message to the Devas and Brahmanas, spirits and demons, primarily the Sakadevas, as well as all the numerous gods and deities who have committed themselves to fulfill and preserve the Sambhuddha Sasana. Let us transfer this message to our guardian deities who keep a watchful eye over us and keep us out of harm's way. May they prosper in divine power and wisdom. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also transfer this message to our forefathers, our ancestors, those who passed away in our name, reminding ourselves that it is in the blood, sweat, and tears today we are able to enjoy the comforts of life and practice the path. Let us also transfer these messages to members of the armed forces, as well as the police force who sacrificed their lives to protect the peace and harmony of our nation, as well as those who lost their lives in the wars, be they friend or foe. Let us also transfer this message to those who lost their lives in natural disasters and calamities, such as tsunamis and earthquakes, landslides, fires, floods, pandemics, and so on, reminding ourselves that in this infinitely long journey of samsara, they will all have been mothers and fathers to us, friends to us, acquaintances of ours, and therefore, with an abundance of loving kindness and compassion, as well as a sense of gratitude for all that they have done for us, let us transfer this message to all of them. May, by the power of these merits, if any of them have been born in the woeful planes, they redeem themselves to be born in the blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may by the power and blessings of all the merits that we have acquired throughout the day, we be able to witness the advent of many hundreds of thousands of arahants on this blessed land. And may you and I and everyone who's helped make this program a success become a Rahatan Mahanse or an Arahat Theranin Mahanse in this very life itself and in the era of this Sambhuddha Sasana itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you all. And the members of the Mahasangha will now transfer their blessings to you. Rajagiriya midetva dveshaginneng midetva mohaginneng midetva Nibbāna parama sukhayen Sukhitatarvetva Nibbāna parama sukhayen Sukhitatarvetva Mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo Nibbāna parama sukhayen Sukhitatarvetva Nibbāna parama sukhayen sukhitatāra vedma. Nibbāna parama sukhayen sukhitatāra vedma. Rajagiriya niveva Deshagini niveva Mohagini niveva Nivan sapalabeva Nivan sapalabeva Nivan sapalabeva. තුන්රුවන්ගේ සුවිසි අනන්ත මහා ගුණ බැලෙන් සියලු ලෝක සියලු සත්වයෝම නිබ්බාන පරම සුඛයෙන් සුගතිතර වෙත්වා. සාදු සාදු සාදු.